I secretly paid $67,000 to save my brother's house from foreclosure. 2 years later, when my name appeared on the refinancing paperwork, he told his wife I was making it all up. $67,000 to save his family. Then he looked me in the eye and called me a liar. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 41 years old. I'm a contractor. I've been doing construction work since I was 19, framing, finish carpentry, renovation, whatever the job requires. I built my own business from nothing. One truck, one toolbox, and 22 years of early mornings. I own a house in the southwest part of Atlanta that I bought when I was 32 and have been slowly improving ever since. No wife, no kids, just me, the work, and a savings account I've been adding to for as long as I can remember. I don't say any of that to brag. I say it because what happened 2 years ago, and then again 4 months ago, only makes sense if you understand where I started and how carefully I've built what I have. 2 years ago, I gave my brother $67,000 to save his house from foreclosure. He took it. His family kept their home. His kids didn't have to change schools. And 4 months ago, when his wife found out about it through refinancing paperwork, my brother told her I was lying about the whole thing. He looked at the woman he married, then looked at me, and chose the version that protected him. This is that story. My brother Derrick is 7 years younger than me. He's 34 now. We grew up in Decatur, Georgia. Mom worked as a school cafeteria manager for 23 years. Dad drove a city bus until his knees gave out, then found work at a hardware store. Decent people, hardworking people. Not wealthy, but not desperate either. We never missed meals. We just never had extra. I was the one who skipped college and went straight to work. Got my first construction job at 19 through a family friend who ran a small crew. I was bad at it for a while, then decent, then good. Saved every dollar I could. Started taking side jobs. Eventually broke off and started my own operation. Derrick went the other direction. He was always the smart one in the room, the one teachers loved, the one who had the answer before you finished the question. He got a partial scholarship to a university in Savannah, studied business, graduated with a good degree and a head full of ideas. For a while, the ideas worked. In his late 20s, Derrick launched a small catering supply company, delivering commercial kitchen equipment and disposables to restaurants and event venues across the metro area. It was a good concept. The timing was decent. He had a handful of solid clients early on. He married Nicole when he was 28. She worked in healthcare administration. They bought a house in a nice suburb east of Atlanta for bedrooms, a yard, a 2-car garage. Their son was born the following year. Their daughter 2 years after that. From the outside, Derrick had made it. He'd done what our parents had always hoped we'd do. I was proud of him. I was genuinely, fully proud. But I could see things that other people weren't seeing. The catering supply business had thin margins, and Derrick was expanding too fast. He hired too many people too early. He took out a business line of credit to buy a second delivery van and then took out another to upgrade his warehouse lease. He started chasing bigger contracts, hotel chains, conference centers, without having the capital to absorb delays in payment. I'm not a business expert. I'm a contractor, but I've run my own operation long enough to know what it looks like when someone is growing on borrowed money instead of real revenue. I mentioned it to him once, carefully. He smiled and told me I didn't understand his industry. He wasn't wrong that I didn't know his specific industry. He was wrong that that made the concern invalid. When Derrick was 31, the business collapsed. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow and ugly unraveling over about 18 months. A major hotel client went bankrupt mid-contract and left Derrick holding unpaid invoices. 2 of his drivers were in an at-fault accident, and the insurance situation became a nightmare that consumed months of time and money. He lost the warehouse lease, then the second van, then the clients who needed that delivery capacity. I watched it happen from a distance. Derrick didn't let me in during the collapse itself. He was too proud, too convinced he could turn it around. Every time I asked how things were going, he said some version of working through it. I'd heard that answer from him his whole life. By the end, Derrick had approximately $40,000 in business debt, a line of credit he couldn't service, and a salary he could no longer pay himself. He found work as a sales rep for a commercial cleaning products company. It paid reasonably, but it didn't pay enough, not fast enough, to catch up on everything that had fallen behind during 18 months of operating at a loss. The mortgage was one of the things that fell behind. Not a little behind. A lot behind. He never told Nicole the full picture. I found that out later. He kept managing it, making partial payments, negotiating with the servicer, buying time. She knew things were tight. She didn't know exactly how tight. By month 16 of the business failure, the bank sent a final notice. Foreclosure proceedings would begin in 60 days unless the account was brought fully current. The amount owed to bring it current was $67,400. That covered the missed principal, interest, fees, and late penalties. Derrick called me on a Sunday night. I could tell from the first word he said that he had been working up to this call for a long time. His voice was different. The performance he usually carried was gone. He was just my younger brother, 31 years old, scared, out of options. "Marcus," he said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I'm about to lose the house." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Let it land. "How far behind?" He told me. All of it. Not just the mortgage, the business debt, the credit lines, the full picture he had never told another person. It came out in one long, halting exhale, like he'd been holding it in so long it hurt to release it. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, I asked him how much he needed to keep the house. He told me $67,400. I had $67,800 in a dedicated savings account. I had been building it for 4 years to fund a workshop addition on my property, a proper woodworking studio I'd been dreaming about for a long time. I had the plans drawn. I had contractors priced. I was 4 months away from breaking ground. I want to tell you what that workshop meant to me, because I think it matters. I've been working with my hands my whole adult life. Construction, renovation, finish work. I'm good at it. But the part I've always loved most is the precision work, the carpentry, the joinery, the kind of detailed craftsmanship that takes time and care and a proper space to do well. For 22 years, I'd been doing that work in a cramped one-car garage with borrowed light. The workshop had always been the dream, the place where I'd finally have room to do the work right. For years of savings. Every January, I'd add up what was in the account and think, getting closer. And then I'd go back to the garage and keep working. I sat with the number Derrick had told me for a moment. It was not a difficult decision. That may sound strange to say. $67,000 is not a small number. But the decision itself was not complicated. He was my brother. Those were his kids. There was no version of me that could put the phone down and say I can't help with that. "All right," I said. "Marcus." "All right. I'll take care of it." Silence on the line. "I can't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask. I'm offering." "That's everything you save for the workshop." "Yeah, it is." "Marcus, I can't." "Derrick, your kids. You hear me? Your kids live in that house. Do not argue with me about this." He cried. I don't say that to diminish him. It was an honest response and I understood it. I told him how this was going to work. I was going to contact the mortgage servicer directly, make the payoff myself from my account, and get the account brought fully current. I would not lend the money to Derrick. I was not going to create a situation where my brother owed me a debt that hung over every conversation for the next decade. This was a gift. I asked 2 things of him. First, do not fall behind again. Figure out the budget, cut whatever needs to be cut, and don't let this happen a second time because I will not be able to do this again. Second, I didn't want it to become a big thing in the family. I didn't want Mom calling to thank me every week. I didn't want it to be an ongoing subject. We handle it. It's done, and we move forward. Derrick agreed to both. He did not tell Nicole. That was his choice, not mine. I knew it could become a problem eventually, but it was his marriage and his information to disclose. I couldn't make that decision for him. I transferred the funds to the mortgage servicer 10 days later. The account was brought fully current. The foreclosure process was halted. The house was safe. I sat in my truck in the bank parking lot after I made the transfer and looked at my account balance on my phone. 4 years of careful saving, gone in a single transaction. I wasn't devastated. I want to be honest about that. There was grief for the workshop. Yes, a quiet grief for the plans still spread across my workbench, for the 4 months that had been standing between me and breaking ground. But beneath that grief was something steadier, a kind of calm that comes when you do the thing that is unambiguously right, regardless of what it costs. I put my phone in my pocket and drove back to the job site. I sent Derrick a text that evening with the confirmation number from the bank. He replied, "I don't have words. Thank you." I replied, "Don't need words. Just stay steady." That was it. We didn't talk about it again for 2 years. And I want to be honest about what those 2 years looked like for me. I put the workshop plans in a drawer. I started a new savings fund from scratch. Slow, methodical, back to basics. There were some months when I felt the absence of that money in a practical, immediate way. A piece of equipment I needed for a job that I had to finance instead of pay cash for. A slow winter where the savings cushion I would have had would have been genuinely useful. Small things that added up to a general awareness that I had made myself financially vulnerable for a while. I did not resent it. I want to be clear about that. I made the choice with full knowledge of what it would cost me, and I stood by it. But I was aware of the weight of it. I'm a contractor. Money is not steady in the way a salaried job is steady. There are months when work stacks up and the checks come in fast, and there are months when a job falls through or a client pays late and you're watching your account more carefully than you'd like. Having that cushion, the workshop savings, had always been my buffer against the uneven nature of the work. Without it, I was operating closer to the edge than I was comfortable with for the better part of 18 months. There was one stretch, around month 8 after the payoff, where 2 of my largest clients delayed final payment on back-to-back projects. Billing disputes on their ends, nothing to do with my work, both eventually resolved. But during those 6 weeks, I was financing materials on a new job out of pocket while waiting on $53,000 in outstanding invoices. I didn't panic. I've been doing this long enough to know that invoices come through eventually. But I won't pretend that if I'd still had that workshop fund intact, those 6 weeks would have felt a lot different. I never said a word about it to Derrick. Not once. That was my problem to manage, and I managed it. What I'm telling you now, I'm telling you because I want you to understand that the sacrifice was real and ongoing. It wasn't a single dramatic moment of writing a check and feeling noble. It was 24 months of smaller, quieter adjustments. Of patience. Of putting the workshop back in the someday pile and focusing on the immediate work. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I chose this. But I want the full weight of it to exist in this story. Derrick, to his credit, did stay steady. He was never behind on the mortgage again, as far as I knew. He got a promotion at the cleaning products company. Nicole's income was stable. The family was, from the outside, fine. We talked maybe once a month. Saw each other at holidays. Things were normal between us, maybe more than normal, actually. There was a particular warmth in how Derrick spoke to me during those 2 years. Something behind his eyes when he'd shake my hand or clap me on the back at a family cookout. Something in the way he'd check in on me, not often, but sincerely, asking how the business was going, whether I had enough work lined up. Asking in a way that made me think he was aware of what I might have given up. I understood what that warmth was. He was carrying the knowledge of what I'd done. He hadn't forgotten it. It sat between us the way significant things sit between people who've been through something real together. I noticed it especially around the kids. His son turned 5 during the first year after the payoff. They had a birthday party, backyard, inflatable slide, the full production. I stood at that party watching his boy run across that yard, and I thought, that's it. That's the whole reason. Not the number. Not the sacrifice. Just a kid at his birthday party in his own backyard because the house is still standing. That's worth everything. I didn't need him to say thank you every time he saw me, but knowing he remembered was enough. Or at least, it was enough until it turned out that remembering wasn't the same as being willing to defend the truth of it. Then, 18 months after I made the payoff, Derrick and Nicole decided to refinance their mortgage. Rates had shifted favorably. It made financial sense. A standard transaction. During the title search and lien review process, the routine paperwork that any mortgage refinancing requires, the title company flagged a notation in the property's payment history. A large payoff had been made by a third party. The name associated with that payment was mine. This is standard. It's a paper trail. It exists because I made a direct payment to the mortgage servicer from my personal account, and those institutions record who made the payment. It's not a lien, Not an ownership claim, not anything legally significant. It just shows that a third party made a large contribution toward the mortgage balance at a specific point in time. The title company noted it, asked Derrick to explain it or provide a statement that it was a gift with no expectation of repayment, so they could clear it and proceed with the refinancing. This is where things fell apart. Because instead of telling Nicole what had actually happened, instead of saying, "I need to tell you something I should have told you 2 years ago. My brother paid off the back mortgage when we were about to lose the house," Derrick panicked. I don't know exactly what he said to her. I only know what she said to me. Nicole called me on a Wednesday afternoon. I was on a job site, up on scaffolding, when my phone rang. I climbed down and answered it because I recognized her number. Marcus. Her voice was flat and tight. "Hey, Nicole. Everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I need a straight answer." "Okay. Were you at any point a partial owner of this house? Did you give Derrick money toward this mortgage with the expectation that you had some kind of stake in the property?" I understood immediately what was happening. I took a breath and told her the truth. Plainly, without drama. I told her that Derrick had come to me 2 years ago facing foreclosure, that I paid off the overdue balance directly to the mortgage servicer, that it was a gift, that I had no ownership interest and had never claimed one, that the title notation was simply a record of the transaction. Silence on the line. Why didn't he tell me? Nicole, that's a question for Derrick. I can't answer that for him. Did you ask him not to tell me? I asked him not to make it a big production with the whole family. I didn't tell him to hide it from his wife. More silence. How much? $67,400. I heard her exhale, long and shaky. He never told me, she said, more to herself than to me. I'm sorry you found out this way, I said. But what I told you is the truth. The bank records will confirm everything. The wire transfer is documented. There's nothing hidden here except Derrick not telling you the source of the payment. I have to go, she said. She hung up. I stood on the job site holding my phone, waiting. An hour later, Derrick texted me. The text said, "Why did you tell Nicole you paid off the mortgage?" I stared at the message. I typed back, because she asked me directly and I told her the truth. He replied, "You've made everything complicated." That was the last text for 3 days. On the 4th day, Nicole called me again. But the woman who called me this time was different from the first call. She wasn't confused. She wasn't processing. She was certain. "I talked to Derrick," she said. "He told me what actually happened." I felt something tighten in my chest. "He says you helped him with one payment during a rough patch. He says you gave him around $2,000 and that you've been inflating the number ever since. He says the title notation was a clerical thing and that you're using it to try to claim some kind of involvement in our finances." I was so quiet she asked if I was still there. "I'm here," I said. "Marcus, I don't know what's going on between you and Derrick, but this is our house, our family's home, and if you have some kind of—" "Nicole," I said, "I'm going to stop you there. I have the wire transfer confirmation. I have the mortgage servicer's payoff letter with my name on it. I have the account history showing the balance being brought current on the date I made the payment. I have every piece of documentation this requires. Derrick knows exactly what happened. He says you're exaggerating to feel important." That sentence landed somewhere deep and sat there. I did not raise my voice. I did not curse. I am not that kind of man. "All right," I said. "I'll send you the documents." I gathered everything that night. The wire transfer confirmation showing $67,400 sent from my account to the mortgage servicer. The payoff confirmation letter from the bank. The account statement showing the balance going from $67,400 past due to zero. The email confirmation from the servicer that the foreclosure process had been halted. I organized it into a single file and emailed it to both Derrick and Nicole. Derrick called me 20 minutes after I sent it. I answered. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "You told your wife I was lying, Derrick. I told her you were exaggerating. I sent you the wire transfer. You know what the number is. You know what I did." "I know what you did." His voice was different now, harder. "I also know you've always had to be the one who saves everybody. You've always had to be the one who swoops in. Our whole lives, Marcus. You're always the guy who fixes it. And now you're using this to what? To make me look bad to my wife. I had not expected that. I had expected anger. I had expected defensiveness. But I had not expected him to reframe the act of helping him as a character flaw of mine. You've always had to be the one who saves everybody. I turned that sentence over in my head while we were still on the call, and I had a thought that I want to be honest about. There might have been a version of that observation that held some truth. Maybe there were times in our lives when my helpfulness had carried a note of superiority that I wasn't fully aware of. Maybe Derrick had been carrying something around that particular dynamic for longer than I knew. But here's the thing. Even if all of that were true, even if I had complicated motivations, even if helping him made me feel capable and needed, none of that changes the fact that he called me on a Sunday night. I gave him everything I had saved, his kids kept their home, and then he told his wife I was making it up. Whatever I am, whatever my motivations, whatever the complicated history between us, those are separate questions from whether I told the truth. I told the truth. I sent the documents because you told her I was lying, I said slowly. That's the only reason. You could have let it go. You call me a liar, Derrick. I protected my marriage by making me the villain in a story where I gave you everything I had. He didn't answer that. I need you to stay out of our finances going forward, he said. Whatever was between us about this, it's done. Don't bring it up again. He hung up. I'm going to be very honest about what happened next, because I think it's the part of this story that's hardest to tell. I could have let it end there. Between me and Derrick, the documents were sent. Nicole had the truth in her inbox. Whatever she chose to do with it, believe it, dismiss it, confront Derrick, that was between them. But our mother got involved. I don't know exactly what Derrick told her. I only know what she said when she called me 2 days later. Marcus, what are you doing to your brother? Mom. He's trying to rebuild his life. Nicole is upset. The kids are picking up on tension. And you're sending documents and making accusations. I paid off his mortgage, Mom. $67,000. He told Nicole I was making it up. He says you gave him money once, and you've been building it into something bigger. I have the bank records. Why are you doing this? Because he lied. He called me a liar. You should have let it go. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Mom, I have wire transfer records. From my bank. To his mortgage company. For $67,400. This is not a disagreement about memory. This is a documented fact. Family doesn't do this to each other. He started it. You're the older one. That line. That specific line. The older one. As if the older one is always required to absorb whatever the younger one does and respond with grace and silence. Mom, I said, I love you, but I'm not going to pretend I didn't do what I did. And I'm not going to let Derrick say I lied when I have proof that I told the truth. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I hope you know what you're destroying. And she hung up. In the weeks that followed, the family fractured along exactly the lines you'd expect. My mother's 2 sisters, my aunts, both called me within the same week. Neither of them asked for my side. Both of them told me I was being destructive. One of them said, $67,000 for a family member is nothing to brag about, as if documenting the truth was the same as bragging. I want to stop on that one for a moment, because it captures something important about what happened at the family level. The framing that settled in, the story that circulated, was that I had made the payment 2 years ago and then, when it became inconvenient, had decided to hold it over Derrick's head, that I was using the money as leverage, that I was being controlling and manipulative, that the real problem here was not Derrick calling me a liar, but me refusing to graciously disappear. Nobody in that version of the story asked why it was controlling to produce a bank record confirming a documented transaction. Nobody in that version asked why the appropriate response to being called a liar by your brother is silence. They just needed a version of events they could live comfortably inside. A version where nobody had to confront Derrick about what he'd actually done. My cousin Derrick, different Derrick, named after our grandfather, texted me a paragraph that began with, I'm not taking sides, and ended with, but Derrick's kids don't deserve this. I read that message twice and then set my phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long time. Derrick's kids. I thought about those kids constantly during all of this. I had thought about them when I wrote the check. I had thought about them at that birthday party. I thought about them when my mother hung up on me and when my aunts called to tell me I was being destructive. Nobody asked me what I thought was best for those kids. Nobody seemed to consider that the version of events in which their father's lie went unchallenged was not actually the version best suited to building anything solid. Comfortable, maybe, but not solid. I didn't say that out loud. Not to anyone in the family. What would have been the point? My one uncle, my father's brother, Uncle James, who lives in Macon, sent me a handwritten note. Not an email. A note, mailed to my house. It said, "I heard about the trouble. You did right by him. Don't let them tell you different." That was the entire note. I taped it to the inside of my kitchen cabinet where I'd see it sometimes. Still there. My father called me that same Saturday morning. We've never been the kind of father and son who talk often or easily. He's a quiet man. Not distant, exactly, just measured. He shows up when it counts and doesn't make a lot of noise the rest of the time. I've always respected that about him. I did, start to finish. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You got the paperwork?" he said. "Yes, sir. All of it. The transfer, the bank letter, all of it. Every piece." He was quiet again. "Then you did right," he said. "All of it, including showing it. Half the family thinks I should have let it go. Half the family isn't the one who got called a liar." That was the whole conversation. My father is not an eloquent man, but he said the right thing, and I have held on to it. I want to talk about what I've been sitting with since all of this happened, because I think it's the part that matters beyond just the events themselves. I have never in my life needed to be recognized for what I give. I'm not built that way. My parents raised me to work hard and not expect applause for it. When I helped Derrick 2 years ago, I meant what I said. It was a gift. Handle it, move forward. I genuinely did not need a monument built in my honor. But there is a difference between not needing recognition and accepting being called a liar. Those are not the same thing. Derrick understood that difference once, or I believed he did. The man who called me on that Sunday night 2 years ago, voice cracking, telling me the full picture of everything he'd let fall apart. That man understood what honesty cost. He had been carrying the weight of all those deceptions, and the relief of finally telling someone the truth had been audible in his voice. Somewhere between that phone call and the moment Nicole found his name in the title paperwork, something changed in him. The story he told himself about what happened, who helped who, how much it mattered, what it meant, had shifted. I don't know if he consciously revised it or if it happened gradually, the way people sometimes rewrite their own histories to protect their sense of themselves. Either way, when the moment came to either stand in the truth or protect his image with his wife, he chose his image. I understand why. I genuinely do. Admitting to Nicole that your house almost went to foreclosure and your older brother had to save it, that your wife was living in a home that existed because of someone else's sacrifice without ever being told, that is a humiliating thing to admit. It would require him to show her a version of himself he had never intended her to see. I understand the impulse. I don't excuse it. Because the cost of his self-protection was my reputation. He took the truth of what I did and called it a lie, and he did it in front of the woman he was married to, and in front of our mother, and in front of everyone in our family circle who asked about it. That is not a small thing. And no amount of understanding his reasons erases what it felt like to stand there with $67,000 worth of documented sacrifice in my hand and hear the people I grew up with choose the easier story. There's something else I've been thinking about. When I made that payment 2 years ago, I set my workshop plans aside. I folded them up and put them in a drawer. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I'd rebuild the savings and pick those plans back up. I'm about 2 years into rebuilding now. Between the original 4-year savings period and the roughly 24 months since I started over, I've put about $22,000 back together. At my current rate, I'm probably 4 years away from where I was when I handed everything to Derrick. I don't say that with self-pity. I made the choice. The choice was right. I'd make it again. But I'll be honest, there's a particular weight to rebuilding something you already built once. The first time, you're fueled by the vision of what you're working toward. The second time, you're doing the same work with the full knowledge of what it cost you the first time. And now, layered on top of that, You're doing it knowing that the person you did it for decided it was more convenient to deny it. That weight is real. What's also real is this. Nicole emailed me. About 6 weeks after everything erupted, I got an email from Nicole's personal account. Not her work address, not a joint account. Her personal one. She said she had reviewed the documents I sent. She said the records were clear and she believed them. She said she was sorry for the way she had spoken to me during our second phone call, when she was going off what Derrick had told her. She said she and Derrick were in counseling. She did not say anything bad about Derrick in the email. She was careful about that. But she said, "You deserved better than what you got from this family." I'm sorry. I read that email 3 times. I wrote back, "I appreciate you saying that. I hope you two work it out. Genuinely." I meant it. They have children. They have a life together that is worth protecting if it can be. The fact that Derrick made a terrible choice in a moment of panic does not mean their marriage is beyond repair or that those kids should grow up in a broken house. Derrick and I have not spoken since the day he told me to stay out of his finances. He has not contacted me. I have not contacted him. My mother calls once every few weeks. We talk about neutral things, her garden, my jobs, the weather, a cousin getting married. Neither of us brings up Derrick. It's like there's a room in the middle of our conversations that we both walk around and never enter. I don't know how long that lasts. Maybe forever. Maybe something shifts eventually. I'm not waiting on it. I've had a lot of time to sit with what this whole experience revealed, not just about Derrick, but about family dynamics in general. About what happens when truth becomes inconvenient for people who love each other. Here's what I've come to understand. When Derrick called me that Sunday night, he was at the bottom, truly at the bottom. Every defense he had built around his sense of himself, the successful entrepreneur, the capable provider, the man who figured it out, had collapsed. He was raw, and in that rawness, he was completely honest with me, maybe more honest than he'd ever been in his life. That kind of honesty is rare, and it's fragile. Over the 2 years that followed, as Derrick stabilized, as the new job took hold, as the mortgage stayed current, as Nicole stopped worrying about money the way she had been, the rawness faded. That's natural. That's what healing looks like. You stop being at the bottom. You rebuild your image of yourself. You become, again, the man who handles things. The problem is that somewhere in that rebuilding, the memory of needing someone else to handle it for you becomes harder and harder to carry. Not because you're a bad person, but because it conflicts with the story you need to tell about who you are. I think that's what happened to Derrick. By the time Nicole found that paperwork, the version of events that existed in his mind had already been quietly rewritten. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually softened. The $67,000 became significant help. Then it became one bad month where Marcus chipped in. Then, when he had to say something out loud under pressure, it came out as an exaggeration I was making. I don't think he sat down one day and decided to lie. I think the lie built itself slowly, the way they sometimes do, out of shame and self-protection and the very human need to be the hero of your own life story. That understanding doesn't make it okay, but it does make it comprehensible. And for me, comprehension has been part of how I've made peace with it. I've also made peace with this. The truth does not require anyone's cooperation to exist. The wire transfer happened. The foreclosure was canceled. The records are real. Whether Derrick acknowledges it, whether my mother acknowledges it, whether my aunts acknowledge it, none of that changes the fact. The truth is in the paperwork. The paperwork exists. It will continue to exist. I've built my whole life on the principle that work is its own record. You show up, you do the job, and the building stands when you leave. You don't need someone to verify it. The evidence is right there in the structure. That's how I've come to think about what I did for Derrick's family. The evidence is right there. The house is standing. The kids are in school. The mortgage is paid. I did that. Nobody can take it from me, even if they try. I want to say something to anyone who's listening and wondering if they would have done what I did. If they would have made that payment, given up their savings, their plans, their years of quiet work. Do it if you can do it freely, without expectation, without needing it to be recorded in some permanent ledger of who gave what to whom. Because if you give it and you need the gratitude in return, you'll be crushed. People are not always equal to the sacrifices made for them. That's not a cynical observation. It's just true. People are complicated. Love is complicated. The story someone tells themselves about who they are is sometimes more important to them than the facts of what actually happened. Give the gift because giving it is the right thing to do. Give it because those kids deserve to stay in their home. Give it because when your brother calls you at night with his voice cracking and everything falling apart, there is only one answer and you know what it is. Give it for those reasons. Not because you expect to be thanked. Not because you expect to be remembered correctly. Not because you expect that years later, in a moment of pressure, the person you gave it to will choose you over their own comfort. They might not. Derrick didn't. And I still think I did the right thing. I still think the payment was right. The gift was right. The silence for 2 years was right. Sending the documents when I was called a liar was right. All of it was right. But it cost me more than I planned. Not just the money. The money I can rebuild. What I can't fully get back is the simple, uncomplicated belief I used to carry that my brother and I understood each other. That the thing between us, built over 41 years of shared history, shared parents, shared struggle, was solid, was real. I still think it was real, once. What I know now is that real things can break. Even things that were genuinely built. Even things that cost you something. That workshop I've been saving for is still in the plans. The folder came back out of the drawer about 3 months ago. I've been updating the drawings. Adding a few features I couldn't afford the first time around. Making it better. I pulled out the original drawings one evening last month and sat with them at the kitchen table. The pencil notes from 4 years ago were still there in the margins, measurements, material costs, the small adjustments I'd made as I refined the vision over time. It felt like finding a letter you wrote to yourself. The plan is still good. Better than good. I'm going to build it. And when it's finished and I'm standing in that space, doing the precise work I've always loved with room to do it right, I'll know exactly what it cost. Every early morning, every invoice I saved, every dollar I set aside, and then, for a while, set aside for someone else. I'll know. And I'll be glad it was me who answered that phone. I'll get there. I'm still the same man I was the night I picked up that phone and told my brother I'd handle it. I'm still the kind of man who answers that call. I'm just a little wiser now about what answering it sometimes costs. And I'd rather be this man, the one who paid and got lied about, than the one who let his brother's kids lose their house because he was afraid of what it might cost him. That's what I carry. That's what's mine. And no amount of revisionist family history is going to change the fact that on a Tuesday morning 2 years ago, a mortgage servicer received $67,400 from my account, a foreclosure was canceled, and 2 kids got to stay in their home. That happened. It is documented. And it is real. Have you ever sacrificed something significant for a family member who later denied it or minimized it? Have you ever had the truth of something you did questioned by the people who should know better? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing in what actually happened? Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes the most painful lies are the ones told by people who know the full truth and tell the lie anyway. If you believe that saving someone's house and then being called a liar for it is not something anyone should have to accept quietly, hit that like button and subscribe. Because $67,000 is not a rounding error, and a wire transfer is not an exaggeration. The records exist. The truth exists. And if the people around you choose a comfortable lie over a documented fact, that tells you exactly what you need to know. Hashtag I paid off his mortgage.